Okay, this is Beauty Angels Advanced Lesson 6 S-Stroke, and I'm going to try to talk my way through it. So we begin with the 3 little introductory strokes. And then, not really doing an S, I'm just doing kind of a curved initial stroke and not very widely separated, longer stem. For the next one, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm going a little bit higher. And the same long stem. And the third one is higher still with the longer stem. This is when I'm going to make my transition stroke or my connection stroke, but so that I don't forget, I'm going to fill in here in between each of those head strokes. All right, so I start with this first connection or transition stroke, and then just a little bit of a connection stroke there. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my first of 2 dotted lines going down to 0.6 relatively gradually. Now, my first of the connection strokes is going to be a very large S. My only real S of the entire S pattern. And then I'm going to connect it with a C stroke, like this. And then behind it, adding a little bit of a dog's leg there and closing up this gap. Coming out of here, I'm going to create a second dotted line. I have found that this helps me with both this pattern and the inverse stroke pattern. Then I'm going to do one last curving stroke here. Before I go into the S's. So these S's start off small. And they're going to get, well, you have to keep them equidistant, and they're going to get a little bit longer and a little bit flatter with each one. But you see how much or how little longer and flatter? I mean, it really is barely noticeable. And by flatter, I don't mean straight. I mean starting to fall down, like, dominoes falling. Ultimately, we're going to be reaching for that lower dotted line. And as we approach that, we're setting ourselves up for success at the end. Now, we're not going to go beyond that dotted line on these lower strokes. We're just going to get flatter. to the point where now I'm coming out to where the second series of dots was. And then we have our final kind of flat stroke there. My next step is to go to the right of each of those S's and bring up a stroke all the way up to that top dotted line. I really want to keep it tight, though. I don't want a big gap between the S and this line that I'm extending up. Also shouldn't have gone past it like I did right there. And since everything is falling, all these strokes are falling, this stroke is also going to be getting progressively flatter. But this is not when you're really making your spine or your connection stroke. That's going to be happening with the intermediate nanostrokes. Now this is all blurred out. You can't even see it to begin with. But at this point, that's really not part of the design. Now I'm going to, before each, on the left side of each well, it's on the right side of each of those longer strokes. Now I'm drawing a relatively short stroke that's coming up, and it's going to curve enough to create that spine. So we have a nice flow going on there. I was trying to accomplish all of this at once, and instead of separating it out, and I guess my brain thinks too linearly or consecutively in terms of first you do this, then you do this. I don't have like other people's skill where I can just make it look exactly like it's supposed to look by doing the whole stroke at once, if that makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to the inside right here, and I'm going to kind of create a boot and come up and again connect with the spine. So with this, you're really closing any gaps. But here is where I'm adding a little bit of that kick, that boot, I call it. I mean, I've heard other people call it things like dog's leg or whatever, but it's not necessarily going to fill up everything. I'm just trying to make a little bit of a embellishment, an embellishment on for the S curve. So I'm probably going to have to go through and add even more, since all this is doing right here is just adding a little piece. You see that? So I'm going right here, adding it, and continuing on up. The reason I'm continuing on up is because it's going to help those strokes look like classic strokes instead of nano strokes, because I only use a nano blade for the whole thing. I'm not going to try to do anything here. It's too crowded. I can't see everything that's going on. I can definitely see that there's spaces there that I don't want, but I'm going to wait until after I've cleaned up everything to add them. So now I'm putting in my upper strokes. Okay, and we don't want much going on here. We just want that spine closed up, or the connection line. But you do need to get kind of progressively more slanted. These blades either hold too much pigment or not enough. I know it's smeared right there so you can't see, I'm sorry. But all will be revealed soon. Okay, let me wipe this and see what we have awaiting us. So right off the bat, I see that there definitely needs to be more intermediate strokes in here, the nano strokes. So I'm just filling up space wherever I see it with more of these nano strokes. You want to kind of keep them progressively low. They're not supposed to go like high, high, low. We can add a little kind of triangular thing there. But this spine has been a little bit messed up. I don't want to add to it too much, because then it just looks like I drew it in. So I think that's not too horrible looking. So I'm going to turn off the video and restart it for the left side so it's not too long.